Hey guys, it's me, Sam Stein again, here at the Bulwark. I am joined by Joe Perticone, who is our, I guess, congressional reporter extraordinaire. How do you want to be referred to here, Joe?
My technical title is National Political Reporter.
National political reporter, but your expertise tends to be on Congress. Although you're a man of many hats, you can cover fashion, skateboarding, all that. And today we're going to talk. Joe, you can laugh; it's okay. And today we're going to talk about your new piece, which I actually thought was pretty remarkable, honestly. It's called GOP Prepares Scapegoat in Case Trump Loses. And why I thought it was remarkable is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's something like kind of happening just slightly under the radar, certainly off of the main stage, because they're all focused on, the presidential contest, which is what we do every 4 years. We get obsessed about this stuff. But on the Hill, the Freedom Caucus has introduced or made a legislative demand that could be like the first domino in a pretty remarkable chain of events. Explain what we're talking about here.
So there's this bill. They introduced it in May. It's called the SAVE Act. They've already done a floor vote on the House, but they know it's not going anywhere. So their demand that it be looped in with any kind of government funding bill, that deadline is September 30th, so right before the election. Basically what it does is it imposes penalties for attempting to register an illegal immigrant to vote, or an illegal immigrant actually voting. It also mandates that states purge their voter rolls of anyone who doesn't have proof of citizenship to vote. But most of what's outlined is already illegal. It's already illegal for an immigrant to vote.
That's what I was going to say. So they're basically putting together a piece of legislation that solves a problem that doesn't really exist.
Yeah, and there's studies, which I noted in the piece. The Trump administration actually launched a commission to investigate what Trump thought were 3 to 5 million illegal immigrant votes in the 2016 election. He did that because he thought that he actually won by an even greater margin than he actually did, and was so upset about it. He had a commission created. The commission disbanded without finding any evidence. In 2022, there was another commission in Georgia, and they looked back 25 years, and they only found about 1,600 cases of illegal immigrants attempting to register to vote, but none of them actually were able to register to vote. They were caught immediately. So there's not only no evidence of this happening, there's just ample evidence that it doesn't happen at all, really.
So then why, if you're the Freedom Caucus, why do this?
So in 2020, the dispute of the election by Trump was very much on the fly. They improv'd it together until it became this formal operation that mounted on these frivolous legal challenges and culminated with, a violent mob attacking the Capitol. This time around, it seems to be more sophisticated. They expect to challenge things if they lose, and only if they lose. In this case, for example, Fox News, Dinesh D'Souza, a lot of these people have had to issue retractions, or they have settled for hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes. and saying, millions of illegal immigrants voted illegally, saying that without any evidence, well, that's a faceless group of people that don't have any legal recourse, that can't dispute any claims that they're voting in hordes. There's no financial threat. It's not like all undocumented immigrants could get together in a class action and sue for these claims. And so what this looks like is a pretext to denying the election in a way that really can't be disputed in any way, shape, or form, even if it can't be proven at all. And demanding that this be part of the government funding bill.
We'll get to that in a second, but I just want to unpack this. So just to make it as clear as I possibly can, they put together a bill. If the bill doesn't pass, which is unlikely to pass, we'll get to that in a second. If the bill doesn't pass, they can then turn around, they being the Freedom Caucus, and say, you know what? This election is tainted because you didn't allow this legislation, which would have prohibited the voting of illegal immigrants, and therefore it's likely that illegal immigrants voted, and that cost Donald Trump a victory. That's your suspicion. Okay. The secondary benefit that I see is that if it does pass, which I don't think it will, but they can then purge the voter rolls, right? Like that's the other pretense here is like you can just say, okay, go purge the voter rolls, and not everyone has proof of identification. Not everyone is able to do that, and so you can then purge the voter rolls. Okay, so then let's get back to the legislative calendar here. It's not going to pass, right?
No, this thing will be a non-starter in the Senate. Including it. So when they voted on it as a standalone in the House, it passed with pretty much every Republican. And then I think there were 5 Democrats voted for it. And that's another thing too, is that the closer we get to election day, the more vulnerable Democrats there are. And so this creates what's known as a trap bill, where the minority party has these vulnerable members who don't want to be seen as weak on the border or weak on crime or weak on whatever the issue is. And so they vote for it. And we saw this right before the August recess. 6 Democrats voted to condemn Kamala Harris because the GOP, upon learning that Kamala would now be the Democratic nominee, issued an emergency resolution to condemn her inaction on the border. And just because it had to do with the border and these 6 vulnerable Democrats didn't want to be seen as soft on the border, they had to go vote for it. And then they say, well, we got this bipartisan thing accomplished. And that's politics.
Well, let me test the proposition here that it won't pass. I don't think it will pass, but Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, he supports this, right?
He does. The reason why I don't think it would pass, though, is because he has shown, when push comes to shove, and McCarthy did the same thing, which was ultimately his downfall, that he'll kind of ditch some of the loonier things if it avoids a government shutdown. And a government shutdown caused by the House, caused by Republicans, like 4 weeks, 5 weeks before Election Day, is horrific politics. It shows incompetence. Government shutdowns can sometimes be blamed on the president too, but the president's not running. And so
I'm going to paint you a picture. 5 weeks before Election Day, government's got to get funded. Freedom Caucus says we are not going to vote for anything unless it includes the SAVE Act. We know that House Speaker Mike Johnson has already supported the SAVE Act. They say, you know what? We will depose of Johnson if he doesn't include it in the government funding bill. Make the Senate vote for this. And then from the top ropes, Donald Trump, the party's nominee, who is you have to support if you're a Republican, says the House Republicans should not pass a government funding bill unless it includes this provision that would explicitly say illegal immigrants are not allowed to vote. What happens then?
Government probably gets shut down. And like the idea that a government shutdown's like they've been narrowly avoided the past couple of years, but like if you remember under the Trump administration, it was every year. There were 2 of them in 2018. There was the longest one in U.S. history. It was over a month long.
Right.
And so I don't think they're above shutting down the government. And a lot of these members of the Freedom Caucus, whenever funding deadlines come up, a lot of them say, who cares if we shut down the government?
Right.
Because that means we're not
Yeah.
spending. And it's like, well, you still are gonna, but because there's back pay, but they kind of like it. They're not, they'd be happy shutting down the government. And a lot of these Freedom Caucus members, they're all in like deep ruby red districts where they don't have to worry about the electoral ramifications, and they don't care about the ramifications for the vulnerable members of even their own party.
Yeah. All right. So I think we can foresee a situation where we probably, maybe likely, have a government shutdown on our hands as we roll into Election Day over the politics of immigration, which is obviously catnip for the right. And then finally, Joe, leave this here. We're laying the predicate to blame them for Trump's election loss. How do you see that playing out? Like, I mean, obviously, this entire campaign, from Trump's perspective, he wants to litigate on the issue of migration. On his talk yesterday with Elon Musk, I mean, they spent a lot of time on that topic. He was warning of caravans again. But do you think the public kind of buys this stuff, or are they immune to it now that we've had a couple straight cycles where this is the big scare tactic?
I think that immigration is still a very dominant issue.
Right.
What we've seen, though, is that Harris has carried her language a little bit differently. Democrats have also, like, it kind of broke through the way that there was a bipartisan plan on immigration and Republicans rejected it, and Donald Trump instructed them to reject it. And you're seeing it in all the Harris materials that they're putting out, that it was Trump who tanked a solution to immigration.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's breaking through. You know, what matters is ultimately what happens. Even if they do claim that migrants stole the election, that's something they would have to prove in court, which they can't. There is no way to legally overturn the election. If it's done, it'll be done illegally.
Right.
And what that looks like, we don't know, other than the past examples of what they tried, which were not very thought through.
No, and not successful either. All right. I would highly encourage everyone to go check out Joe's piece. It's called GOP Prepares Scapegoat in case Trump loses. It is almost a Nostradamus-like look at the future from Joe. Also, Joe's going to be with me at the convention, Democrat convention next week, where he'll be filing regularly, daily from Chicago. But you're here watching us on YouTube, so I have to say, please subscribe, like all these videos, and then share them with your families and friends. All of this stuff is dependent on the support from viewers and listeners and readers like you. So thank you very much for that. And tune in next when we continue producing fresh new content on The Bulwark. Thanks, guys.
Hey, guys, it's Sam Stein, managing editor at The Bulwark. I want to just take a moment to talk to you about what we have planned for the upcoming Democratic convention. We're going to have a lot of original reporting from people on the ground in Chicago. We're also going to be having really interesting insights and analysis from some of our staff back here in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. A lot of what we're doing is going to be going up on our YouTube page. We're producing amazing video content there. And I want you to think about subscribing to that page. All this stuff that we are doing depends on people like you subscribing, supporting our mission, helping our reporters and journalists out as they cover events like the Democratic Convention in Chicago. So please take your time, go to our YouTube page, check out what we've done there, and subscribe. And more than that, tell your friends to subscribe too. We need the support of people like you.